The knife came out fast, 6 inches of steel catching the dim streetlight, the kind of blade that meant business, not intimidation. Bruce Lee's eyes tracked the weapon with the cold calculation of someone who'd seen knives before. Not in demonstrations, not in choreographed film sequences, but in Hong Kong's rooftop fights where teenagers settle disputes with blades and fists and no rules except survival. Ray Morrison, 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, undefeated in Oakland's underground fighting scene, held the knife low and forward, experienced grip, confident stance. Behind him, his 2 associates flanked outward, cutting off escape routes, their body language saying this wasn't their first robbery. Behind Bruce, Linda Lee pressed herself against the brick wall of the alley, her breath quick and shallow, her mind still processing how dinner at their favorite restaurant had turned into this. 3 men blocking their path, demands for money, crude comments about her being with a Chinese man, and now a knife. Linda, Bruce said quietly, his voice showing none of the fear she was feeling. Don't watch. But she couldn't look away. Ray stepped forward, the knife leading. Last chance, Chinaman. Wallet. Now, or I cut you and take it anyway. Bruce's stance shifted, subtle, almost imperceptible, weight redistributing, hand coming up slightly, body angling to protect Linda while maintaining sight lines on all 3 threats. You have 1 chance to leave, Bruce said, his tone conversational, like he was discussing the weather. Take it. Ray laughed. His associates laughed. This small Chinese guy in his fancy suit was giving them an ultimatum, while Ray had a knife, while they had numbers. This was the best part of robberies, when a victim tried to talk tough before reality hit. Wrong answer, little man, Ray said and moved. The knife thrust forward, aimed at Bruce's stomach, a killing strike committed and fast. What happened next took 4 seconds. 45 minutes earlier, Bruce and Linda sat in the corner booth of China Garden, their favorite restaurant in Oakland's Chinatown, a small establishment with red vinyl seats, fluorescent lighting that hummed constantly, and the best beef chow fun within 50 miles. Linda was laughing at something Bruce had said, her auburn hair catching the light, her face showing the relaxed happiness that came from 3 years of marriage to a man who made her feel seen and valued despite the constant stares, the occasional confrontations, the social weight of being a white woman married to a Chinese man in 1967 America. And then Steve McQueen actually tried the flying kick, Bruce was saying, demonstrating with his hands on the table, chopsticks forgotten, in cowboy boots. On James's garage floor, which is concrete, he landed flat on his back, looked up at me, and said, "That looked easier when you did it." Linda covered her mouth, trying not to spit out her tea. Did he hurt himself? Just his pride, Bruce said, grinning, though he was limping for 2 days. But that's Steve. He commits fully to everything, even when he shouldn't. The restaurant was nearly empty. 10:45 p.m. on a Wednesday, past the dinner rush, just 2 other tables occupied by older Chinese couples speaking Cantonese. The owner, Mr. Wong, knew Bruce and Linda well enough to wave away the menu and just bring their usual orders without asking. I have news, Linda said, her tone shifting to something more serious, more nervous. Bruce set down his chopsticks, gave her his full attention. What kind of news? The good kind. At least I think it's good. I hope you think it's good. She was rambling now, which she did when anxious. I wasn't sure when to tell you. I wanted to be certain first. I went to the doctor yesterday. And you're pregnant, Bruce said quietly. Linda's eyes widened. How did you know? You've been nauseous in the mornings. You stopped drinking coffee. You keep touching your stomach unconsciously. He reached across the table, took her hand. How far along? 8 weeks, Linda said. I wanted to wait until I was sure, until it felt real. Are you happy? Bruce's face showed the complicated mix of emotions he was feeling. Joy, fear, excitement, responsibility. He was 26 years old, his television show was doing well, but its future was uncertain, his teaching income was modest, and now he was going to be a father. I'm terrified, Bruce said honestly, and I'm happier than I've ever been. Both at the same time. Linda exhaled, relief washing over her face. Me too. Exactly that. Terrified and happy. They sat in the moment, hands linked across the table, both processing the magnitude of what this meant. Their lives were about to change fundamentally. The stakes of everything, Bruce's career, their safety in Oakland, their financial stability, all of it mattered more now because they'd be responsible for someone else. Mr. Wong approached with their check, noticed their clasped hands and the emotional weight in the air, decided not to interrupt. He just set the check on the table edge and retreated with the practiced discretion of someone who'd seen many significant conversations in his restaurant. Bruce paid the bill, left a generous tip, and stood. "We should go. You need rest. Growing a person is hard work." Linda smiled, stood, felt the first flutter of nausea that had been plaguing her for 2 weeks. "I need to use the restroom first. Meet you outside. I'll walk you," Bruce said automatically. "It's right there." Linda pointed to the restroom 15 feet away. "I'll be fine. Get the car, pull it around. I'll be out in 2 minutes." Bruce hesitated, his protective instinct resisting, but Linda was already walking toward the restroom. He watched her enter, then turned toward the exit. The restaurant's front entrance opened onto Jackson Street, the main Chinatown thoroughfare, well lit, busy even at this hour. But Mr. Wong had told them months ago about the back exit through the kitchen, a shortcut to the parking lot behind the building, saving 2 blocks of walking. Bruce went through the kitchen, nodded to the cook who was cleaning his station, pushed open the heavy metal door to the alley. The alley was narrow, maybe 15 feet wide, lined with dumpsters and fire escapes, lit by a single streetlight at the far end where it opened to the parking lot. 100 feet of walk, maybe 90 seconds, then they'd be in the car heading home. Bruce stood outside the door, waiting for Linda, scanning the alley automatically the way he'd been trained to scan any space. Exits, threats, obstacles, sightlines. 3 men stood near the alley's end, maybe 70 feet away. 2 of them were smoking, leaning against the brick wall. The third, larger, more solid, stood with his arms crossed, watching the back door of the restaurant. Watching Bruce. Bruce's internal alarm system activated immediately. Something about their positioning, their attention, their body language. They weren't just 3 guys having a smoke break. They were waiting for something, waiting for someone. The restaurant door opened behind him. Linda emerged, still adjusting her purse strap over her shoulder. "Ready?" she asked, then noticed Bruce's posture, tension he wasn't quite hiding. "What's wrong?" "Nothing yet," Bruce said carefully. "Stay close to me." They started walking toward the parking lot, Bruce slightly ahead, positioning himself between Linda and the 3 men. The distance closed, 70 feet, 60 feet, 50 feet. The 3 men pushed off from the wall, spreading out slightly, blocking the alley's width. 40 feet. Bruce could see them more clearly now in the streetlight. The leader was maybe 6 feet, heavily built, moving with the confidence of someone accustomed to physical confrontation. His associates were smaller, but no less menacing. One wore a leather jacket despite the warm California night. The other had his hands in his pockets in a way that suggested he might be holding something. 30 feet. Well, the leader said, his voice carrying that particular mix of aggression and amusement that predators use when they've cornered prey. "What do we have here?" "Nice suit, Chinaman." "Nice woman, too." His eyes moved to Linda, assessing, insulting. "Very nice woman." 20 feet. Bruce stopped walking, extended his arms slightly, gesturing for Linda to stay behind him. "We don't want trouble," Bruce said evenly. "We're just going to our car. Let us pass." Ray Morrison, though Bruce didn't know his name yet, smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "See, that's the thing. This is our alley. You want to pass through our alley, there's a toll. Call it an access fee." His associates laughed on cue. This was a routine they'd performed before. "How about you give us your wallet?" Ray continued, taking a step forward. "And we let you keep the girl. That's fair, right? You walk away with what matters. We get paid for our time. Everybody's happy." Behind Bruce, Linda's breathing had changed, faster, shallower. She'd grown up in Seattle, middle-class neighborhood, safety taken for granted. She'd never been robbed, never been threatened, never been in real danger. The situation was processing in her mind as fundamentally wrong, as something that happened to other people in news stories, not to her in an alley behind her favorite restaurant. Linda, Bruce said quietly, not taking his eyes off Ray. Stay exactly where you are. Don't move unless I tell you to. Bruce. Her voice was small, scared. Trust me, Bruce said. Then louder, to Ray. We're leaving. You're going to let us pass. This is your chance to walk away. Ray's smile widened. The little Chinese guy was giving him an ultimatum. This was even better than usual. The ones who try to be tough made the submission sweeter. Wrong answer, little man, Ray said. His right hand went to his pocket, emerged with a switchblade. He flicked it open with practiced ease. Click, 6 inches of steel catching the streetlight. Let's try this again. Wallet. Now, or I cut you and take it anyway. Linda gasped. The knife transformed the situation from threatening to lethal. A robbery was scary. A robbery with a knife was potentially fatal. Ray heard the gasp, smiled wider. Fear was the point. Fear made compliance easier. But when he looked back at Bruce, expecting to see that same fear, he saw something else entirely. Bruce's face had gone completely calm. Not the calm of surrender. The calm of someone who'd just received all the information he needed to solve a problem. His weight had shifted slightly, imperceptible unless he knew what to look for, into a stance that looked casual but was actually coiled, ready, optimized for explosive movement. Linda, Bruce said, his voice carrying absolute certainty, don't watch. Ray had been in 23 street fights. He'd seen every reaction to the knife. Frozen fear, panicked running, desperate pleading, aggressive posturing. He'd never seen this. Complete composure, tactical assessment, controlled preparation. For the first time in the encounter, a small doubt flickered in Ray's mind. Maybe this wasn't going to be as easy as he'd thought. But he'd already pulled the knife. He'd already committed, and his reputation, 23-0, never been in danger, didn't allow for backing down from a guy who weighed maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. Ray lunged, the knife thrusting forward toward Bruce's abdomen. A prison-style attack meant to puncture organs, to end resistance immediately. And for the next 4 seconds, Ray Morrison discovered exactly how wrong he'd been. Underscore. Second 0.0 to 0.8. The knife thrust. Ray's knife came fast, the product of 2 years' experience in street violence, a technique he'd used 3 times before, a strike that had drawn blood twice and produced submission every time through threat alone. The blade covered the 3 feet between Ray and Bruce in maybe a quarter second, aimed low at Bruce's stomach where it would be hardest to block, committed fully because Ray had learned that hesitant knife attacks were useless. Bruce's response time was 0.05 seconds. Not thought then action. Pure reflex, trained through 18 years of martial arts practice, refined through actual rooftop combat in Hong Kong, where hesitation meant scars or worse. His body moved as a unit. Not his arms, not his hands, but his entire structure shifting laterally while simultaneously rotating. The movement looked effortless, looked almost lazy to Linda watching from behind, but it was the product of thousands of hours drilling footwork, understanding angles, training his nervous system to respond to threats faster than conscious thought could process them. Ray's knife thrust through empty space. Bruce was simply not there anymore. Shifted 3 inches left, rotated 45 degrees, the blade passing through the space his abdomen had occupied a split second earlier. Ray's brain registered confusion before his body could adjust. Target disappeared. Knife missed. How? But Bruce wasn't just defending. Wing Chun had taught him that defense and offense should be simultaneous, that separating them into distinct actions wasted time and created vulnerability. As Ray's knife arm extended fully, overextended actually because he'd committed to hitting a target that was no longer there, Bruce's left hand came up and bong saw. The Wing Chun deflecting technique that looked gentle but which redirected force with surgical precision. His hand contacted Ray's knife arm at the wrist, applied pressure not against the direction of the thrust, but perpendicular to it, using Ray's own momentum to redirect the blade outward and down, away from Bruce's body, away from Linda behind him. The contact was brief, maybe 0.1 seconds, but in that moment Bruce felt everything he needed to know about Ray. The tension in his forearm, committed, no reserve, the trajectory of his weight, forward overbalanced, the rigidity of his structure, strong but not adaptive. Ray was dangerous to normal people, to civilians, to anyone without training. But to Bruce Lee, who'd fought in Hong Kong, where every encounter was real, where losing meant hospital visits or worse, where technique was tested not in tournaments, but in alleys exactly like this one, Ray Morrison was slow, predictable, and already defeated. Second 0.8 to 1.5, the disarm. Ray tried to pull his knife back, to reset, to adjust his attack now that Bruce had somehow dodged. But his wrist was already being controlled. Bruce's right hand shot forward, bypassing Ray's extended knife arm, his fingers wrapping around Ray's wrist with a precise grip he'd trained 10,000 times on wooden dummies, on training partners, on students who'd learned the hard way that Bruce's control was absolute. The grip wasn't about strength. Bruce's fingers weren't remarkably strong compared to a larger man. But the grip was positioned exactly right. Thumb pressing on the radius bone, for fingers wrapped around the ulna, creating a lever with Ray's wrist as the fulcrum. Bruce's body turned sharply, adding rotational force to the grip, applying maybe 300 pounds of torque to the small bones and ligaments of Ray's wrist joint. The wrist, designed to bend forward and back, not to rotate under resistance, had maybe 100 pounds of rotational tolerance before structural failure. Bruce applied 3 times that tolerance. Crack. The sound was sharp, distinct, audible even over the ambient city noise of Oakland at 11 p.m. Not quite a gunshot, but loud enough that Linda flinched behind Bruce, loud enough that Ray's associates 20 feet away heard it clearly. Ray's scream came half a second later. The delay between structural failure and pain signal reaching his brain, a delay that always existed with sudden traumatic injury, the body needing a moment to process that something was catastrophically wrong. Ah! The knife fell from Ray's suddenly unresponsive hand, his fingers unable to maintain grip, the neural pathways from brain to hand disrupted by the shattered bones in his wrist. The blade hit the concrete with a metallic clatter, bounced once, came to rest 6 feet away. Ray's brain was overwhelmed, pain signals flooding in, adrenaline spiking, confusion about how his attack had gone so wrong so fast. His 200 pounds had momentum, was still carrying him forward even though the forward force that had initiated it was gone. Bruce read that momentum, used it. Second 1.5 to 2.5, the first strike. As Ray stumbled forward, his body following the trajectory his brain had set 1.5 seconds ago, but which was no longer appropriate to the current situation, Bruce released the broken wrist and shifted his weight. Ray was bent forward now, his broken wrist clutched to his chest, his body's automatic protective posture, his core exposed, his center of gravity high and unstable. Bruce's knee came up fast. Not a karate knee strike, chambered, telegraphed, powerful but slow. A Wing Chun knee, direct, economical, traveling maybe 18 inches total, but accelerating through that distance with his full body weight behind it. Ray's falling body met Bruce's rising knee. The impact point was Ray's solar plexus, the cluster of nerves behind the sternum, the spot where striking causes the diaphragm to spasm involuntarily, where even moderate force produces temporary paralysis of breathing. Bruce's knee delivered approximately 450 pounds of force. Not his maximum. He was controlling this, aware that Linda was watching, aware that killing Ray would create legal complications, but more than sufficient. The impact sounded like a bass drum being hit, thump, deep and resonant. Ray's diaphragm spasmed instantly. The air in his lungs expelled in a sharp, O-left sound. His autonomic nervous system, overwhelmed by pain signals from his wrist and now from his solar plexus, shut down all non-essential functions to focus on survival. He couldn't breathe in. His diaphragm wouldn't respond. His lungs were screaming for air, but the muscles required to pull air in weren't working. Panic flooded his system. Not the manageable stress of a fight, but the primal terror of suffocation, of not being able to breathe, of his body refusing to do the most basic thing required for life. Ray dropped to his knees, his good hand clutching his chest, his mouth open but no air coming in, his eyes wide with the specific fear of someone who thinks they might be dying. Bruce's face showed no satisfaction, no anger, no emotion at all. Just focused control. Just the expression of someone executing a necessary task with precision. Ray was on his knees now, no longer a threat, his combat capability reduced to zero by injury and oxygen deprivation. Bruce could have walked away. The threat was neutralized. Linda was safe. The two associates had frozen, uncertain whether to help their leader or run. But Bruce had learned in Hong Kong, you don't leave threats partially neutralized. You don't assume someone won't recover and retaliate. You finish what you start, you remove the threat completely, and you do it in a way that ensures they understand that continuing is futile. Underscore. Second 2.5 to 4.0, the finish. Ray was on his knees, bent forward, trying desperately to breathe, his broken wrist cradled against his chest, his good hand clutching his solar plexus. He looked up, a mistake leaving his head exposed, and saw Bruce standing over him, perfectly balanced, perfectly controlled, not even breathing hard. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Ray saw something in Bruce's eyes that he'd never seen in his previous 23 fights. Absolute certainty. Not anger, not fear, not even effort. Just the cold assessment of someone who knew exactly what they were capable of and exactly how much force was required for any given outcome. In that moment, Ray Morrison understood Bruce could kill him right now. Easily. A strike to the throat, to the temple, to the back of the neck. Any of a dozen techniques that would end life instead of just ending resistance. And Bruce was choosing not to. Bruce's elbow dropped. Not a full power strike. Bruce had controlled it, reduced the force by maybe 60%, but still significant. A downward elbow strike between Ray's shoulder blades, targeting the cluster of nerve along the spine, the kind of blow that disrupts neural signals and causes temporary loss of muscle control. Ray collapsed forward completely, his face hitting the concrete alley floor, his body no longer responding to his brain's commands. Every system overwhelmed by pain and shock and oxygen deprivation. He was conscious, could see the concrete inches from his face, could hear his own gasping attempts to breathe, could feel the agony in his wrist and chest and back. But he was completely immobilized. A 200-pound man reduced to helplessness by a 135-pound opponent in 4 seconds. Bruce stepped back, turned to face Ray's two associates who'd been frozen in shock since the wrist break. "Leave," Bruce said simply. His voice wasn't loud, wasn't aggressive. Just matter of fact. A statement of what should happen next. The two men looked at each other, looked at Ray gasping and groaning on the ground, looked at Bruce standing there looking like he'd just finished a mild workout instead of having just destroyed their supposedly invincible leader. They ran. Not a strategic retreat. Not a tough guy, swagger away. They turned and sprinted down the alley toward Jackson Street, their footsteps echoing off the brick walls, their shapes disappearing into the late-night Oakland traffic. Bruce watched them go, making sure they weren't regrouping, weren't pulling weapons, weren't calling for backup. When they were truly gone, he turned to Linda. She was pressed against the brick wall, her hands covering her mouth, her eyes wide and wet with tears she hadn't realized she was crying. For seconds, she'd witnessed 4 seconds of violence, more brutal and more controlled than anything she'd ever imagined. The knife thrust, the crack of breaking bone, the knee strike, the elbow, Ray screams and gasps. The casual precision with which Bruce had dismantled a man twice his size. And through it all, Bruce's face had shown nothing. No anger, no fear, no satisfaction. Just clinical execution of necessary force. "Linda," Bruce said gently, approaching slowly the way you'd approach a startled animal. Are you hurt? She shook her head mutely. Did they touch you? Another head shake. We need to leave. Can you walk? She managed a nod. Bruce glanced back at Ray, still groaning on the ground, his breathing starting to return in ragged gasps now that his diaphragm was beginning to respond again. You should get that wrist looked at, Bruce said conversationally. It's broken. Probably needs surgery. And next time you pull a knife, he paused, making sure Ray could hear him through the pain. Make sure you know how to use it. Make sure the person you're pulling it on isn't trained to take it away from you. Ray's eyes, visible from his position on the ground, showed fear beyond the physical pain, showed the psychological understanding that he'd just encountered something entirely outside his experience. Bruce turned back to Linda, offered his hand. She took it, her hand trembling in his, and they walked past Ray toward the parking lot. Their footsteps echoed in the alley. Behind them, Ray's groaning continued, gradually becoming mixed with quiet sobbing. Not from physical pain, though that was intense, but from the psychological break of having his entire self-image shattered in 4 seconds. Linda stumbled slightly. Bruce caught her, steadied her, kept walking. They reached Bruce's car, a modest sedan, parked under a streetlight. Bruce unlocked the passenger door, helped Linda in, closed the door gently, then walked around to the driver's side. Before getting in, he looked back down the alley. Ray had managed to sit up, was cradling his broken wrist, was looking in their direction. Even from 50 feet away, even in the dim lighting, Bruce could see the expression on Ray's face. Defeat, complete and total. Bruce got in the car, started the engine, pulled out of the parking lot. Neither he nor Linda spoke for the first 5 minutes of the drive home. Underscore. The drive home. The Oakland streets passed by in silence. Jackson Street to Webster, Webster to Grand Avenue, the familiar route from Chinatown to their apartment in the Lake Merritt neighborhood. Streetlights created stuttering illumination inside the car, Bruce's face alternating between visibility and shadow as he drove. His hands on the steering wheel were steady. His breathing was controlled. His expression was neutral. To an outside observer, he looked like someone who'd just finished dinner and was heading home. Nothing unusual, nothing troubling. But Linda, sitting in the passenger seat with her arms wrapped around herself, her body still trembling with residual adrenaline, could see the tightness around his eyes, the slight tension in his jaw, the way his knuckles showed white where he gripped the wheel. He was processing too, just differently than she was. At a red light on Grand Avenue, Linda found her voice. You broke his wrist. Not a question, a statement, a fact she was trying to make real by speaking it aloud. Yes, Bruce said simply. I heard it break. The sound. She stopped, her throat closing up with the memory. The crack that had been so loud, so distinct, so obviously the sound of something structural failing. I'm sorry you heard that, Bruce said. I'm sorry you saw any of it. The light turned green. Bruce accelerated smoothly, turned left on a Lakeshore Avenue. You could have killed him, Linda said quietly. Bruce didn't respond immediately. 2 more blocks passed. Then, yes. Have you? She couldn't finish the question. Have I killed anyone? Bruce finished for her. No, but you've hurt people. Like that. Before. Bruce pulled the car over to the curb, put it in park, turned to face her fully. They were half a mile from home, parked under a large oak tree, the car interior dark except for the dashboard lights. In Hong Kong, Bruce said carefully, before I came to America, before I met you, I fought. Not in tournaments. Not in demonstrations. Real fights. Rooftop challenges. Street disputes. The kind where you fight until someone can't continue. I was a teenager. Stupid. Angry. Looking for ways to prove myself. Linda listened, her eyes wide, learning things about her husband's past that he'd never spoken about before. I hurt people, Bruce continued. Broken bones. Concussions. One guy I sent to the hospital for a week. I'm not proud of that. It's part why I left Hong Kong. My Sifu, Yip Man, Told me I needed to either stop fighting or leave before I killed someone or got killed. So I came to America. Started over. Try to be different. But tonight, Linda started. Tonight, I protected you. Bruce interrupted firmly. That's different. That wasn't ego. That wasn't proving myself. That was survival. 3 men. A knife. You're pregnant. His voice caught slightly on that word, and they were threatening you. I did what was necessary. Nothing more than necessary. But I won't apologize for it. Linda wiped her eyes, processing. I know you protected us. I am grateful. But I also, she struggled for words. I've been married to you for 3 years. I've watched you teach. I've seen you on TV. I thought I knew who you were. Peaceful. Controlled. The opposite of violent. I'm those things, Bruce said. But I'm also this. He gestured vaguely, encompassing what had happened in the alley. Both can be true. I don't want to fight. I hate fighting. But I can fight when I have to. And when someone threatens my family, I will do whatever is required to keep them safe. That's not contradiction. That's just reality. Linda reached across the console, took his hand. I trust you. I do. I'm processing. Seeing you like that. Seeing what you're capable of. It's a lot. I know. Bruce said, squeezing her hand gently. And I'm sorry. You shouldn't have had to see that side of me. But I can't promise it won't happen again. As long as we're together, as long as you're my responsibility, I'll protect you. And sometimes protecting means violence. They sat in the parked car for another minute, holding hands, both processing, both trying to reconcile the dinner conversation about baby names with the violence in the alley. What happens now? Linda asked. Do we call the police? Tomorrow, Bruce said. Tonight we go home. You rest. I'll think about how to handle this. But right now, you need to be safe and calm. That's what matters. He put the car back in gear, drove the remaining half-mile to their apartment building. The neighborhood was quiet, working-class families, mostly Chinese and some white residents, the kind of area where people minded their own business and didn't ask too many questions. Bruce parked, came around to help Linda out of the car. She was steadier now, the shaking subsiding, but he kept his hand on her elbow anyway, guiding her to their ground-floor apartment, unlocking the door, ushering her inside. Their apartment was small, 1 bedroom, a living room that doubled as Bruce's study where he kept his martial arts books and notebooks, a kitchen barely big enough for 2 people. But it was theirs. Safe. Familiar. Linda went straight to the bathroom. Bruce heard the water running, heard her being sick, whether from the pregnancy or the stress or both, he couldn't tell. He stood in the living room, his mind already working through the implications of what had happened. Ray Morrison had a broken wrist. His associates had witnessed it. They'd tell people. Word would spread through Oakland's underground fighting community, assuming there was such a community, which Bruce suspected there was in any city with Chinatown neighborhoods and racial tensions. The question was, what would the response be? 3 possibilities. First, Ray and his people would let it go. They tried to rob the wrong person, got hurt, learned their lesson, moved on. This was the outcome Bruce hoped for but didn't expect. Men like Ray, men who built their identity on physical dominance, didn't just accept defeat. Their egos wouldn't allow it. Second, Ray would want revenge, would come back with more people, maybe weapons beyond knives, would try to hurt Bruce or Linda to restore his reputation. This was the possibility that made Bruce's jaw tighten. He could handle threats to himself. But Linda, pregnant Linda, couldn't be put in danger again. Third, someone higher in whatever hierarchy Ray belonged to would reach out. Not for revenge, but for what? Recruitment? Respect? Warning? Bruce didn't know Oakland's criminal infrastructure well enough to predict. He needed to talk to James Lee tomorrow. James had lived in Oakland for decades, trained martial arts, knew the street culture. James would know what to expect, how to prepare. Linda emerged from the bathroom, her face pale but composed. I'm okay, she said before Bruce could ask. Just everything hitting me at once. Go to bed, Bruce said gently. I'll be there in a minute. I just need to check the doors and windows. Bruce, we're on the ground floor of a secure building. We've never checked the locks before. Tonight we do, Bruce said firmly. Linda didn't argue. She went to the bedroom, closed the door partway. Bruce spent the next 15 minutes checking every potential entry point. The front door deadbolt, engaged. The kitchen window, locked. The bedroom window, locked. The sliding glass door to their small patio, locked, and he wedged a wooden dowel in the track as additional security. Overkill, probably. Ray Morrison was in a hospital, or would be soon, getting his wrist set. His associates had run away terrified. Nobody knew where Bruce lived. He'd been careful about that, never bringing students to his home, always meeting at James Lee's garage. But probably wasn't certainly. And with Linda pregnant, with everything now higher stakes than it had been 6 hours ago, Bruce wasn't taking chances. He went to the bedroom, found Linda already in bed, curled on her side, her eyes open but unfocused. "Can you turn off the light?" she asked quietly. Bruce turned off the lamp, lay down next to her in the darkness. Outside, Oakland's ambient city noise hummed. Distant traffic, a siren several blocks away, the subtle sounds of people living their lives in close proximity. "Bruce!" Linda's voice was small in the darkness. "Yeah, that man. Ray. Will he come back?" Bruce considered lying, considered saying everything would be fine, they'd never see Ray again. Tonight was an isolated incident. But Linda deserved truth. "I don't know," Bruce said honestly. "Maybe. Probably not. I hurt him badly enough that he'll think twice. But maybe. That's why I checked all the locks. That's why I'm going to be more careful about our routines, where we go when we're alone. Just for a while. Until I know it's really over." "What if it's not over?" Linda asked. "What if he brings friends? What if there's more of them?" "Then I'll handle them too," Bruce said with absolute certainty. "However many there are, whatever weapons they have, I'll handle it. Because he placed his hand gently on her still flat stomach, "and whoever this is, you're my responsibility. And I don't lose when it matters." Linda rolled over to face him, her face barely visible in the darkness. "You scare me sometimes," she said. "Not because I think you'd hurt me, but because I see how capable you are of hurting other people. And I don't know how to reconcile that with the gentle person I married." "They're not separate things," Bruce said. "The capability to protect and the capability to harm, they're the same skill set. The difference is intention. I would never use what I know to hurt someone who didn't deserve it, who wasn't threatening someone I love. But when threat appears, when violence is necessary, yes, I'm capable. And I won't apologize for that capability because it's what kept you safe tonight." Linda was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Okay, I understand. I think. I'm still processing. But I understand." She turned back over, facing away from him again. Bruce moved closer, wrapped his arm around her, felt her relax slightly against him. "Get some sleep," he said quietly. "Tomorrow we'll figure out next steps. Tonight, just rest." But Linda didn't sleep for hours. And Bruce, despite his controlled breathing and his relaxation techniques, didn't sleep much either. Both of them replaying the alley. Both of them processing what had happened and what it meant for their future. Outside, Oakland continued its nighttime rhythms, unaware that in one small ground-floor apartment, two people were learning that safety was more fragile than they believed and that the cost of protecting it was higher than they'd known. Bruce woke at 5:30 a.m., his internal clock precise after decades of morning training. Linda was still asleep beside him, her breathing finally steady after hours of restlessness. He could tell by the shadows under her eyes that sleep had been as elusive for her as it had been for him. He slipped out of bed quietly, dressed in his training clothes, black cotton pants, white t-shirt, and moved to the living room. His body needed to move, needed to process the previous night's violence through the familiar rhythms of training. For 45 minutes, he worked through forms, not traditional Wing Chun forms, but his own evolving combinations, the movements that would eventually become Jeet Kune Do. Footwork, hand drills, kicks to imaginary targets. His body remembering, processing, integrating the experience of the alley fight into his broader understanding of combat. The fight had been clean, efficient, exactly what it needed to be. But it had also revealed something Bruce had been trying to leave behind. The part of him that was still the Hong Kong street fighter, the teenager who'd settled disputes with fists and won rooftop challenges through superior speed and precision. He'd thought that part of him was buried, controlled, transformed into something more civilized through teaching and philosophy and the discipline of martial arts as art rather than violence. Last night had proven otherwise. When Linda was threatened, when survival was the only acceptable outcome, the street fighter had emerged instantly. No hositashjin, no conscious thought, just pure reactive capability honed through years of actual combat. And that scared him more than the fight itself. Because if he was still that person, if the street fighter was always just beneath the surface, what did that mean for his future? For his teaching? For his television career? For raising a child? You couldn't sleep either? Linda's voice came from the bedroom doorway. She was wrapped in her bathrobe, her hair messy from restless sleep, her eyes still showing the strain of last night. Just needed to move, Bruce said, wiping sweat from his forehead with a towel. How are you feeling? Physically? Fine. The baby's fine. I can feel that somehow. But mentally, she trailed off, came to sit on the couch. I keep seeing it. The knife. Your face when you broke his wrist. The sound. And I can't reconcile that with you standing here doing your forms like nothing happened. Bruce sat beside her, took her hand. It did happen, and it will probably affect both of us for a while. But we survived. That's what matters. And today we deal with the aftermath. Make sure it's really over. Make sure we're protected going forward. You keep saying make sure, Linda said. What does that mean? What are you planning to do? First, we report to the police, Bruce said. Get it on record that we were attacked, that I defended us. That protects us legally if Ray tries to press charges or if his friends come looking for revenge. Will the police believe us? An interracial couple. Chinese man saying he was attacked by white men? You know how Oakland police are. Bruce's jaw tightened. She wasn't wrong. Oakland PD in 1967 wasn't known for taking Asian community complaints seriously. And a Chinese man claiming he'd single-handedly defeated 3 attackers, breaking one's wrist in the process? That sounded like exaggeration, or worse, like Bruce was the aggressor. That's why I need you to come with me, Bruce said. Your testimony matters more than mine. He paused. Knowing how this would sound, you're white. They'll believe you. Linda flinched but nodded. The racial dynamics of Oakland in 1967 were ugly, but they were real. Her word would carry weight that Bruce's wouldn't. When? She asked. This morning. 9 o'clock. Before Ray's story gets out, before he spins it to make himself the victim. We need our version on record first. Oakland Police Department. 9:47 a.m. The Oakland Police Department's downtown precinct smelled of burnt coffee, cigarette smoke, and the particular bureaucratic mustiness of old files and older furniture. Bruce and Linda sat in uncomfortable plastic chairs across from Detective Robert Martinez, 47 years old, 23 years on the force, his face showing the particular weariness of someone who'd seen every variation of human violence and wasn't impressed by any of it. Let me make sure I understand, Martinez said, reviewing his notes. You were leaving a restaurant. 3 men approached you in an alley. They attempted to rob you. One pulled a knife. And he looked at Bruce skeptically, defended yourself by breaking his wrist, striking him in the chest and back, and putting him on the ground. In approximately 4 seconds. That's correct, Bruce said. And you're what, 5'7"? Maybe 135 pounds. Yes. And this Ray Morrison, who we have on record as 6 feet, 200 pounds, multiple arrests for assault and battery. You took him down in 4 seconds? Yes. Martinez leaned back in his chair, his expression making clear that he thought this was either exaggerated or entirely fabricated. Mr. Lee, I'm going to be honest with you. That story is hard to believe. Ray Morrison is a known fighter. Underground boxing, street brawls. He's hurt people, seriously hurt them. And you're telling me you disabled him in 4 seconds. Detective, Linda interrupted, her voice firm despite the tremor Bruce could hear underneath. I was there. I saw it. Everything Bruce is telling you is exactly what happened. Ray Morrison pulled a knife on us. He threatened to cut my husband if we didn't give him our money. Bruce protected us. He didn't start the fight. He ended it. Martinez's attention shifted to Linda, his expression softening slightly. Mrs. Lee, I understand you want to support your husband. But are you certain about the timeline? For seconds seems. I'm certain, Linda said firmly. It was so fast I barely processed what was happening. One moment Ray was coming at us with a knife. The next moment he was on the ground and his wrist was broken and Bruce was telling me we needed to leave. It wasn't 4 seconds of back and forth fighting. It was 4 seconds of Bruce neutralizing a threat. Martinez studied her face, looking for signs of coaching or deception. Apparently found neither. He sighed, made some notes. Okay, let's say I believe you, and I'm not saying I do, but let's say I do. You're telling me Ray Morrison, who's in Oakland General Hospital right now with a shattered wrist that required surgery this morning, tried to rob you and you defended yourself. Do you want to press charges? Bruce considered. Pressing charges meant court appearances, meant testimony, meant putting Linda through more stress. But not pressing charges meant Ray could spin whatever story he wanted, could claim Bruce attacked him unprovoked, could potentially come after them without legal consequences. What would you recommend? Bruce asked carefully. Martinez seemed to appreciate the question. Most people came in demanding action or refusing to cooperate. Bruce was asking for professional advice. Honestly, it's complicated. We can charge him with attempted robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. That's solid, especially with Mrs. Lee's testimony. But his lawyer will argue self-defense gone wrong, claim maybe you overreacted, maybe you're the aggressor. In front of a jury, you, small Chinese guy, claiming you beat up a white man twice your size? That plays into stereotypes that might not help you. Bruce's expression didn't change, but his jaw tightened. Martinez wasn't being racist exactly, just realistic about how a 1967 Oakland jury would see things. However, Martinez continued, if you don't press charges, Ray walks away thinking he can try again, or his friends can. And Ray's connected, not mafia connected, but underground fighting scene, some gang associations. Word's probably already spreading that you hurt him. That could bring problems. So what do we do? Linda asked. Martinez thought for a moment. File the report. Get everything on record. Don't press charges yet, but leave that option open. That way, if Ray or his friends come back, if there's retaliation, we have documentation that you were the victims first. It protects you legally without forcing you into a court case that might not go your way. Bruce nodded slowly. It was a middle path, not aggressive but not passive, documented but not escalated. Okay, Bruce said. We'll do that. Martinez spent another 30 minutes taking detailed statements, having both Bruce and Linda sign paperwork, making copies for their records. As they were leaving, Martinez called after them. Mr. Lee, one more thing. Bruce turned. Ray Morrison's wrist is shattered. Surgery this morning, steel pins, 6 months recovery minimum. The surgeon said whatever broke it applied approximately 300 pounds of torque. That's not normal. That's not just I defended myself force. That's serious damage. So let me give you some advice. Be careful. People in Ray's world, they respect power, but they also resent it. You embarrassed him. You might have made him afraid. Afraid men do unpredictable things. Understood, Bruce said. Walking to the car, Linda asked quietly, do you think he'll come back? Ray. No, Bruce said. I saw his face when we left the alley. He was terrified, not just of me, of what happened to his self-image. Men like him, their identity is built on being toughest. When that gets taken away, they don't rebuild. They leave, my guess. Ray Morrison is already thinking about leaving Oakland. How do you know? Because I've seen it before, Bruce said. In Hong Kong, after rooftop fights, the losers didn't stick around for rematches. They left the neighborhood, sometimes left the city. Pride can't rebuild when everyone knows you lost. It's easier to start over somewhere else. They got in a car. Bruce started driving, not toward home, but toward West Oakland. Where are we going? Linda asked. James Lee's garage. I need to tell him what happened. And I need his advice about Oakland's underground scene. If Martinez is right about Ray being connected, I need to understand who else might have opinions about last night. James Lee's garage, 11:15 a.m. James Lee's garage was in a working-class neighborhood of West Oakland, a converted 2-car garage behind his house that had become Bruce's unofficial school. The space was sparse, concrete floor, wooden dummy in the corner, heavy bag hanging from a ceiling beam, weight training equipment along one wall. James was there when Bruce and Linda arrived, working the heavy bag, his powerful frame. 43 years old, 200 pounds of muscle from his judo and weightlifting background, making the bag swing on its chain with each strike. He stopped when he saw them, immediately reading the tension in their postures. "What happened?" James asked. Bruce told him. Everything. The alley, the robbery attempt, the knife, the 4-second encounter, Linda's trauma, the police report this morning. James's face darkened progressively through the story. By the end, his hands were clenched into fists. "Where does Ray Morrison live?" James asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. "James," Bruce started. "Where?" James repeated. "I'm going to pay him a visit. Make sure he understands that coming after you or Linda again would be a mistake." "No," Bruce said firmly. "That's not how we handle this." "He pulled a knife on your pregnant wife," James said, his voice rising. "You're telling me we just let that go?" "I broke his wrist," Bruce said. "He's in the hospital. He's terrified. That's handled. What I need from you is information, not revenge." James took a deep breath, forced himself to calm down. "What kind of information?" "Ray Morrison. Do you know him?" "Know of him?" Martinez said he's connected to Oakland's underground fighting scene. "I need to know what that means. Who he works for. Who might care that I hurt him. Who might come asking questions." James walked to a small refrigerator in the corner, pulled out 2 bottles of water, handed one to Bruce. Took a long drink while thinking. "Ray Morrison is small time," James said finally. "Underground boxer, street brawler. Thinks he's tough because he wins bar fights. He's got maybe 15, 20 wins in unsanctioned matches, warehouse fights, parking lot stuff, betting money. But he's not a real fighter. He's a tough guy who beats up civilians and other tough guys." "Who runs the underground fights?" Bruce asked. "Guy named Vincent Chun," James said. "Chinese-American, grew up in Chinatown, maybe 35 years old. He promotes fights, takes bets, manages fighters. Nothing high-level, no connections to Vegas or real boxing. Just local entertainment for people who like watching men hurt each other. Vincent's connected to some gang elements, but he's not a gangster himself. More like a businessman who operates in gray areas." "Would Vincent care that I hurt Ray?" Bruce asked. James considered. "Depends. If Ray was working for Vincent when he attacked you, like maybe he was supposed to collect protection money or intimidate someone, then yeah, Vincent might care. Might see it as you disrespecting his organization. But if Ray was freelancing, just doing a random robbery, then no, Vincent wouldn't care. Might even be annoyed that Ray got caught, got hurt, brought police attention. How do we find out which it was?" "We wait," James said. "If Vincent cares, he'll reach out. Guys like him, they have to respond when one of their people gets hurt. It's about reputation, about showing they protect their own. If he doesn't reach out in the next day or two, then Ray was freelancing and this is over." Linda, who'd been listening quietly, spoke up. "And if Vincent does reach out, what then?" "Then we have a conversation," Bruce said. "Explain what happened. Make it clear I'm not a threat to his operation. I just defended my family. Men like Vincent, if James's description is accurate, they're pragmatic. They respect strength. If Vincent understands that I'm more trouble than I'm worth, he'll leave us alone. And if he doesn't," Linda pressed. "Then I'll handle that too," Bruce said. James looked at Bruce carefully. "You've changed. Since last night. I can see it in your eyes. You're thinking like you used to think in Hong Kong. Kumbamase. Threat assessment. That's not the Bruce who's been teaching here for 3 years. Last night reminded me who I was before I tried to be someone else," Bruce said quietly. "I thought I'd left the street fighter behind. Thought I'd evolved past that. But when Linda was in danger, all the evolution disappeared in half a second. I became exactly what I needed to be. Someone capable of immediate, decisive violence. And now I'm trying to figure out if that's a problem or if it's just reality." "It's reality," James said firmly. "You can be a teacher and a philosopher and a TV actor, but you're also a fighter. That's not separate from those other things. It's the foundation underneath them. You can teach peace because you understand violence. You can advocate restraint because you know what it means to lose restraint. Don't apologize for what you are. Just control when and how you use it." Bruce nodded slowly, accepting the wisdom in that. A sound outside. A car pulling up, doors closing, footsteps approaching. James tensed immediately. You expecting anyone? No, Bruce said, his body shifting subtly into readiness. 3 men appeared in the open garage doorway. The first was Chinese-American, well-dressed in a tailored suit, maybe mid-30s, carrying himself with the confidence of someone accustomed to authority. Behind him were 2 larger men, muscle, bodyguards, their role obvious from their positioning and posture. Vincent Chen. Mr. Lee, the well-dressed man said, his voice polite, almost friendly. I'm Vincent Chen. I was hoping we could have conversation. About last night. About Ray Morrison. About how we move forward from here. Bruce and James exchanged glances. Vincent had reached out. That meant Ray wasn't freelancing. That meant this wasn't over yet. Come in, Bruce said calmly. Let's talk. Underscore. The conversation. Vincent Chen stepped into the garage, his bodyguard staying near the doorway, close enough to intervene if needed, but far enough to show this wasn't an immediate threat. Vincent's eyes scanned the space quickly, taking in the training equipment, the wooden dummy, the weapons, bow, staff, nunchaku, hung on the wall for demonstration purposes. Interesting setup, Vincent said. James, good to see you. It's been a while. Vincent, James acknowledged neutrally. Vincent's attention shifted fully to Bruce. Mr. Lee, or should I say, Kato? A slight smile. My daughter watches The Green Hornet every week. Loves the fight scenes. She doesn't know that the TV actor her father came to see today is the same man who put Ray Morrison in the hospital last night. Small world. What do you want, Vincent? Bruce asked directly. Information first, Vincent said. Then we'll discuss wants. Tell me what happened last night. Your version. I've heard Ray's version, or rather, I've heard what little Ray was willing to say through the pain and the shame. But I want to hear yours. Bruce told the story again, clinical and factual. The restaurant, the alley, the robbery attempt, the knife, the 4-second encounter, Linda's presence throughout. Vincent listened without interrupting, his face showing nothing. When Bruce finished, Vincent was quiet for a long moment. Ray's wrist is destroyed, Vincent finally said. Surgery this morning. Surgeon told him he'll never have full strength in that hand again. 6 to 9 months recovery, then physical therapy, and even then he'll be maybe 70% of what he was. For a fighter, that's career-ending. You know that, yes? I know that, Bruce said. I also know he pulled a knife on my pregnant wife. I used exactly as much force as necessary to neutralize the threat. Not more. Not less. If he'd had a gun, I might have killed him. If he'd had just his fists, I'd have hurt him less. But he had a knife, and I had half a second to decide how to protect my family. I made the right choice. Vincent nodded slowly. I believe you. And for what it's worth, Ray was freelancing. He wasn't working for me last night. He was just being stupid, saw what he thought was an easy score, didn't know who he was targeting. That's on him, not on you. Then why are you here? Bruce asked. 3 reasons, Vincent said, holding up 3 fingers. First, Ray worked for me sometimes. Not last night, but often enough that people associate him with me. When he gets destroyed in 4 seconds by a man half his size, people talk. They wonder if Vincent Chen's people are weak. If his operation is weak. I can't have that talk spreading. So I need to address what happened. He lowered 1 finger. Second, my younger brother Tommy was one of Ray's associates last night. One of the 2 who ran away when you broke Ray's wrist. Tommy came to me this morning, told me what he saw. He's terrified. Says he moved so fast he couldn't process it. Says he looked like he could have killed Ray easily. I need to know if my brother's assessment is accurate. He lowered another finger. Third, I run underground fights. Men compete for money, for pride, for reputation. I'm always looking for talented fighters. And based on what happened last night, Mr. Lee, you're extremely talented. So I'm here to apologize for Ray's behavior, to assess whether you're a threat to my operation, and to make you an offer. I'm not interested in fighting in your organization, Bruce said immediately. I'm not offering you a fighting contract, Vincent clarified. I'm offering you a teaching contract. My fighters, they're tough. They're strong. They win through intimidation and raw power. But they're not trained like you. Not technical. Not efficient. Ray Morrison is a perfect example. Strong, aggressive, undefeated in 23 street fights, and you destroyed him in 4 seconds because you have skills he doesn't. I want my fighters to have those skills. Bruce considered this. Teaching underground fighters was ethically gray territory. These were men who hurt people for money, who operated outside legal boundaries, who represented exactly the kind of violence Bruce claimed to have evolved beyond. But they were also men who already existed, who were already fighting. If Bruce taught them discipline, technique, control, could that reduce the severity of the violence they caused? Could teaching predators to be more precise actually result in less damage overall? I have conditions, Bruce said. I expected you would, Vincent replied. Let's hear them. 1. I teach principles, not techniques. Your fighters have to be willing to unlearn bad habits, to question what they think they know. If they're not teachable, I'm not teaching them. Vincent nodded. Agreed. 2. No violence toward civilians. Ever. If I train someone and I hear they're using what I taught them to rob people or intimidate innocents, I'm done. They're out. And I'll personally make sure they regret it. Agreed, Vincent said. My fighters work for me. Collection, enforcement, security. They don't freelance. What Ray did last night violated my rules. He's already been cut loose. 3. I teach where I want, when I want. Here, in this garage. Not in your venues. My space, my schedule, my rules. Agreed. 4. Ray Morrison leaves Oakland. Permanently. I don't want him getting ideas about revenge. I don't want him running into Linda somewhere and making threats. He's gone, or there's no deal. Vincent's expression showed this was the first condition that gave him pause. Ray leaving Oakland isn't my decision to make. He's not my employee anymore. But he considered. I can strongly suggest it. Can make it clear that staying in Oakland would be bad for his health. If he's smart, he'll listen. And Ray, for all his faults, isn't completely stupid. He knows what you're capable of now. My guess? He's already planning to leave. Make sure of it, Bruce said. I'll do what I can, Vincent said. Anything else? Yes. This conversation stays private. I don't want my TV producers, my Hollywood students, or anyone outside this garage knowing I'm associated with underground fighters. I'm building a legitimate teaching career. Can't have it derailed by rumors that I'm training criminals. I respect that, Vincent said. Discretion is how I stay in business anyway. Nobody outside my circle will know. They looked at each other for a long moment. Bruce assessing whether Vincent was trustworthy, Vincent assessing whether Bruce was someone he wanted in his orbit. Finally, Vincent extended his hand. We have a deal. Bruce shook it. The grip was firm, professional, both men understanding that this handshake represented an agreement that couldn't be written down, couldn't be formalized, could only be enforced through mutual respect and the implicit threat of what would happen if either violated it. We have a deal, Bruce confirmed. Good, Vincent said. I'll send 3 fighters to start. Next week, they'll be respectful, attentive, ready to learn. And Mr. Lee, thank you for handling last night the way you did. You could have killed Ray. You could have called police immediately, made a big scene, brought attention to my operation. You didn't. You protected your family efficiently and left. That's professional. I respect that. Vincent turned to leave, his bodyguards falling in behind him. At the doorway, he paused. One more thing. Your wife, is she okay? Tommy said she looked terrified. She's processing, Bruce said. It was traumatic for her, but she'll be okay. I have a wife too, Vincent said quietly. 2 daughters. If someone pulled a knife on them, I'd have done worse than breaking a wrist. Just want you to know what you did, how you handled it. That's what any man protecting his family would do. Don't carry guilt for that. Then he was gone, his car pulling away, leaving Bruce and James and Linda alone in the garage. The silence lasted 5 seconds. Then James said, Well, that went better than I expected. Did it? Linda asked. Her voice was tight, strained. Because it sounds like Bruce just agreed to teach criminals how to fight better. I agreed to teach fighters discipline, Bruce corrected. There's a difference. is there? Linda asked. These are men who hurt people for money, Bruce. And you're going to make them more effective at it. How is that okay? Bruce didn't have a good answer. Not one that would satisfy her. Not one that fully satisfied him. It's complicated, he said finally. Everything's complicated now, Linda said quietly. She turned and walked out of the garage toward the car. Bruce watched her go, feeling the weight of all his choices. The choice to break Ray's wrist, the choice to engage with Vincent Shun, the choice to teach fighters who lived in moral gray areas. She'll come around, James said. She's scared, angry, processing. Give her time. Maybe, Bruce said. Or maybe she's right to be questioning this. Maybe I'm making mistakes I'll regret. Or maybe you're doing what's necessary to protect your family and support your students, James countered. World isn't black and white, Bruce. Sometimes you have to operate in the gray. Bruce nodded, not entirely convinced, but knowing James had a point. He'd entered that alley last night as a teacher, an actor, a man trying to leave violence behind. He'd left it as something else, something more honest, maybe. Something more dangerous, definitely. And now he had to figure out how to reconcile those identities. The peaceful martial artist who taught Hollywood actors and preached discipline, and the street fighter who could destroy a man in 4 seconds when his family was threatened. Both were real. Both were him. The question was, which one would define his future? 1 week later, March 22nd, 1967. Ray Morrison sat on the edge of his hospital bed, his right wrist encased in a heavy cast that extended from his knuckles to halfway up his forearm. Inside the cast, steel pins held the shattered bones in approximate alignment while they healed, a process that would take months and would never fully restore what had existed before Bruce Lee's hand had twisted his wrist beyond its structural tolerance. The doctor had been blunt this morning during discharge. You'll regain maybe 70% function. The small bones healed wrong before we could set them properly. Too much swelling, too much damage. Physical therapy will help, but you'll never have full strength or full range of motion in that hand again. Ray had nodded, accepting, not asking the questions he knew the answers to. Could he fight again? Could he return to the underground circuit that had been his income and his identity for 3 years? Could he rebuild the reputation he'd spent 23 fights constructing? No, no, no. The man who'd walked into that alley a week ago, confident, undefeated, feared an Oakland street fighting community, no longer existed. Bruce Lee had destroyed him in 4 seconds and created someone else. A cautionary tale, a warning, a reminder that confidence without awareness was just arrogance waiting to be corrected. Tommy Morrison, Ray's younger brother, sat in the corner of the hospital room, had been there for most of the week, guilty and scared and trying to figure out how to help. Vincent's downstairs, Tommy said quietly. Wants to talk to you before you leave. Ray's face tightened. Vincent Shun, his former employer, his former connection to steady income, his former source of respect in the underground world. Ray knew what Vincent wanted to talk about. How one of his fighters had gotten destroyed by a TV actor. How that made Vincent's organization look weak. How Ray needed to either fix the problem or disappear. Tell him to come up, Ray said tiredly. Tommy left, returned 2 minutes later with Vincent, who entered the hospital room alone, his bodyguards waiting in the hallway. Vincent's face showed neither anger nor sympathy, just the practical assessment of a businessman dealing with a failed investment. Ray, Vincent said, nodding. How's the wrist? Fucked, Ray said bluntly. Doctor says 70% recovery maximum. Says I'll never fight professionally again. I know, Vincent said. I talked to your surgeon. Asked him directly. Can this man return to combat sports? He said no. So we both know your fighting career is over. Question is, what happens now? Ray had been thinking about this question for 7 days. Had run through every scenario, every possibility, every path forward. Stay in Oakland, try to rebuild reputation through other means, security work, enforcement, intimidation. Impossible. Everyone knew what happened in that alley. Every time he walked into a room, people would remember. That's Ray Morrison, the guy who got destroyed by the Chinese TV actor in 4 seconds. His presence would be a joke, a reminder of failure, not a source of fear or respect. Challenge Bruce Lee to a rematch. Try to restore pride through revenge. Suicidal. Ray had replayed that 4-second encounter 10,000 times in his mind, trying to figure out what he'd done wrong, how he could have won. The answer was always the same. Nothing he could have done would have mattered. Bruce Lee was operating on a different level. Not stronger, but infinitely more skilled, infinitely faster, infinitely more precise. A rematch would just result in worse injuries or death. Leave Oakland, start over somewhere else? The only option that made sense. Go somewhere nobody knew his name, nobody had heard the story, nobody would look at him and see failure. I'm leaving, Ray said. Tomorrow. Bus to Los Angeles. Cousin there says he can give me construction work. Fresh start. Different city. Different name, maybe. Vincent nodded approvingly. That's smart. Smarter than I expected, honestly. You're making the right choice. Don't have a choice, Ray said bitterly. Can't stay in a city where he lives. Every day, I'd be wondering if I'd run into him, if he'd finish what he started. And I can't live with that fear. So I leave. Bruce Lee isn't going to come after you, Vincent said. I've talked to him. He's not that kind of person. He defended his family. That's done. He's not interested in revenge or hunting you down. If you stay in Oakland and leave him alone, he'd leave you alone. Maybe, Ray said, but I can't take that chance. And more than that, I can't stay in a place where everyone knows I lost. My reputation is everything in this world. Without it, I'm nothing. Better to be nothing somewhere else than be a joke here. Vincent reached into his suit jacket, pulled out an envelope, set it on the hospital bed table. $500, Vincent said. Severance. Get yourself settled in L.A. Find work. Build a new life. And Ray, don't come back to Oakland. I mean that as advice, not a threat. You come back, people will expect you to do something about Bruce Lee, to restore your honor or whatever. And if you try, he'll put you down again. Permanently, maybe. So just stay gone. Okay. Ray looked at the envelope, at the money that represented Vincent cutting him loose, ending their business relationship, acknowledging that Ray Morrison the fighter was finished. Okay, Ray said quietly. Vincent stood, moved toward the door, paused. One more thing. I've hired Bruce Lee to teach my fighters the same skills he used on you. I want my people to have them. Just thought you should know. So when you hear stories about Oakland fighters getting better, getting more technical, you'll understand why. Your loss became their education. Ray's face showed complicated emotions. Anger at being reduced to a teaching example, grudging respect for Vincent's pragmatism, bitter acknowledgement that this made sense. If you couldn't beat someone, you learned from them. Makes sense, Ray said finally. Vincent, one question. Yeah. What's Bruce Lee like? When you talk to him, is he as dangerous as he seemed in that alley? Vincent considered how to answer that. Honestly, I think that alley was him being restrained. I think if you'd actually hurt his wife, if you'd made him choose between your life and her safety, you'd be dead right now. So yeah, he's that dangerous. Maybe more. Good to know, Ray said. Good to know I didn't fight a fraud. That it wasn't luck or a fluke. That I lost to someone genuinely exceptional. Makes it easier somehow. That's one way to look at it, Vincent said. Good luck in L.A., Ray. Don't come back. He left. The room felt emptier with him gone, the finality of the conversation settling over Ray like weight. Tomorrow he'd get on a bus. Leave Oakland. Leave his reputation. Leave the identity he'd built over 3 years and 23 wins. Start over as nobody. All because he'd made one mistake. He'd pulled a knife on the wrong man. James Lee's garage. Same day, 6 p.m. 3 men stood in James Lee's garage, looking uncomfortable and curious in equal measure. Vincent's fighters, sent for their first training session with Bruce Lee, unsure what to expect, their body language showing the particular tension of predators encountering someone they'd been told was an apex predator. Bruce studied them as they studied him. The first was Carlos, Mexican-American, maybe 28, 5'10", and 190 pounds of muscle, tattoos covering his arms, a fighter's cauliflower ears showing years of combat sports. Underground boxing mostly, Vincent had said. Good hands, decent footwork, wins through power and intimidation. The second was Marcus, African-American, early 30s, 6 feet tall and 210 pounds, broader through the shoulders than Carlos, moving with the loose confidence of someone who'd been in hundreds of physical confrontations. Street brawler background, some wrestling, dangerous in close quarters. The third was Danny, white, youngest of the three at maybe 25, 5'11" and 185 pounds, lean muscle, eyes that tracked everything, calculating. Former military, Vincent had mentioned. Dishonorably discharged for fighting, found his way into Oakland's underground scene, methodical and brutal. All three of them had heard the story about Ray Morrison. All three of them were sizing up the small Chinese guy in front of them, try to reconcile the TV actor they'd seen on the Green Hornet with the fighter who destroyed Ray in 4 seconds. Bruce let them look, let them assess, let them form their initial judgments. Then he spoke. Vincent sent you here to learn, to improve, to become more effective fighters. But before we start, I need to know, why do you fight? The three men exchanged glances, unsure if this was a trick question. Carlos answered first, for money. I've got a family to support. Underground fights pay better than anything else I'm qualified for. Marcus, because I'm good at it. Because people respect me when I win. Because it's what I know. Danny, because I like it. Because fighting is honest. No bullshit, no politics. Just you and another guy figuring out who's tougher. Bruce nodded, accepting these answers without judgment. I fight to protect, Bruce said simply. My family. My students. People who can't protect themselves. That's my motivation. That's my purpose. And everything I teach comes from that purpose. Not sport, not ego, not entertainment. Survival. Protection. Ending threats as efficiently as possible. He walked to the center of the garage. What I'm going to show you tonight isn't about making you better underground fighters. It's about making you more complete martial artists. Right now, you win through physical advantages, size, strength, aggression. But what happens when you face someone smaller, who's more skilled? What happens when your opponent is faster than you? What happens when strength isn't enough? We lose, Carlos said honestly. You lose, Bruce confirmed. Like Ray Morrison lost. Not because I'm stronger, I'm not. Not because I'm tougher, I'm probably not. But because I have skills you don't have. Recognition speed, structural efficiency, economy of motion. And in 4 seconds, those skills erased Ray's 70-pound weight advantage. Bruce gestured to James Lee, who'd been watching from the corner. James is going to help me demonstrate. He's 43 years old, has been my training partner for 3 years, understands these principles. Watch what happens when size meets skill. James stepped forward. 6 feet tall, 200 pounds, legitimately powerful from decades of judo and weightlifting. He looked more physically imposing than Bruce in every measurable way. James, punch me, Bruce said. Full speed. Really try to hit me. James set his stance, fired a jab-cross combination with legitimate intent. His hands were fast for a big man, his technique solid. Bruce moved minimally, 6 inches to the side, small deflection with his left hand, James's punches missing by narrow margins. Then Bruce's hand shot forward, stopped 1 inch from James's throat. If this were real, Bruce said calmly, James would be unconscious or dead right now. His punches were good, but I saw them coming half a second before he launched. That half second is the difference between offense and defense. That's what I'm going to teach you. Not how to punch harder. You already punch hard enough. How to see what's coming before it arrives. He reset, positioned James again. James, try to tackle me. Use your judo. Really try. James shot forward, attempting a double-leg takedown, using his superior weight and wrestling skill. Bruce's hips moved backward 6 inches, just enough to make James's grip miss, while Bruce's hand came down on the back of James's neck, pressing downward, using James's momentum against him. James stumbled forward, off balance, vulnerable. In a real fight, Bruce said, my knee would be coming up right now, meeting James's face. Fight over. Instead, I just demonstrated the principle. You don't need to be stronger than someone trying to take you down. You need to understand their momentum and redirect it. That's leverage. That's physics. That's what I teach. The 3 fighters were paying attention now, their initial skepticism eroding, their analytical minds recognizing that what Bruce was showing wasn't tricks or movie choreography, but legitimate combat principles. For the next 90 minutes, Bruce taught. Not techniques, not here's how you throw a punch, or here's a specific combination, but principles. Centerline theory. Your opponent's center is the most direct target. Strikes that travel straight down centerline arrive faster than circular attacks. Economy of motion beats power when speed is equal. Demonstration. Bruce's straight punch arriving before Carlos's wider hook, despite Carlos's greater strength. Simultaneous defense and attack. Blocking then countering is 2 actions. That's slow. Blocking while countering is 1 action. That's fast. Wing Chun calls this Lin Sil Dai Dar, simultaneous defense and offense. Demonstration. Marcus throws a punch. Bruce deflects with one hand while striking with the other, both actions happening at the same instant. Trapping range. Most fighters train 2 ranges, kicking distance and punching distance. But there's a third range, the gap between, where kicks are too slow and punches are partially extended. That's trapping range, where you control your opponent's arms and they can't defend. Demonstration. Danny attacks. Bruce enters, controls both of Danny's arms using positioning, not strength. Danny's suddenly unable to punch or defend. In this position, I have 12 targets available and you have 0 defense. That's trapping. Recognition speed. Every attack has a preparation phase. Your shoulder drops. Your weight shifts. Your eyes focus. If I see the preparation, I respond before your attack launches. That's why I seem fast. I'm not reacting to your attack. I'm reacting to your intent. Demonstration. Bruce has each fighter attempt to surprise punch him. Bruce evades all of them, explaining afterward what tells he saw. By 7:30 p.m., all 3 fighters were exhausted, not from physical exertion, but from mental effort. Everything Bruce taught contradicted their existing training, required them to think differently about combat, challenged assumptions they'd built over years of street fighting. That's enough for tonight, Bruce said. Same time next week. Between now and then, practice what I showed you. Not in fights, in training. Slow repetitions. Understanding the principles before you, try to apply them fast. Questions? Carlos raised his hand. This stuff, does it really work in street fights? No rules, real danger. It's all I've ever used, Bruce said simply. I don't compete in tournaments. Don't fight for sport. Every fight I've been in was real. Rooftops in Hong Kong. Alleys in Oakland. When someone pulls a knife on my wife. That's when this works. That's what it's designed for. Not sport. Survival. The 3 fighters nodded, understanding. As they were leaving, Danny paused at the doorway. Ray Morrison, Danny said. I knew him. Fought on the same cards a few times. He wasn't bad. Wasn't great, but wasn't bad. And you destroyed him in 4 seconds. That's true, Bruce confirmed. Could you teach me to do that? To end fights that fast? Bruce considered the question carefully. I can teach you the principles that make it possible. But being able to apply them in 4 seconds on a real threat? That takes years. Decades, maybe. I've been training since I was 5 years old. I'm 26 now. That's 21 years of daily practice. If you're willing to put in that work, then yes. Eventually you could. I'm willing, Danny said seriously. Then I'll teach you, Bruce said. See you next week. 2 weeks later, April 5th, 1967. Linda sat at their small kitchen table, morning sickness subsiding enough for her to eat breakfast, toast and tea, nothing fancy, while Bruce read the Oakland Tribune's morning edition. They'd settled into a careful routine over the past 2 weeks. Bruce taught his regular students during the day, Hollywood actors, martial artists seeking to expand their knowledge, students who paid well and asked questions about philosophy and technique. Then 3 evenings a week, he taught Vincent's fighters, who paid nothing but whose teaching served a different purpose. Protection for Linda, respect in Oakland's underground world, and the opportunity to channel violence toward discipline. Linda still didn't love it, still questioned whether teaching criminals was ethical. But she'd stopped arguing about it after Bruce had pointed out a simple truth. These men are going to fight regardless, with or without my teaching. At least now, they're learning control, learning precision, learning when not to fight. That's better than leaving them exactly as they are. She'd accepted that argument, if not fully embraced it. Ray Morrison left Oakland, Bruce said, looking up from the newspaper. Not reading an article, just informing her of something he'd learned yesterday from Vincent. How do you know? Linda asked. Vincent told me. Confirmed Ray got on a bus to Los Angeles 2 weeks ago. Hasn't been back. Won't be back. That threat is over. Linda set down her tea, processed this information. The man who'd pulled a knife on them, who'd threatened to kill Bruce, who'd given her nightmares for 2 weeks, gone. Removed not by police or legal system, but by the simpler calculus of pride and fear. Do you feel bad? Linda asked. About what happened to him? About ending his career? Bruce thought about that carefully. I feel bad that violence was necessary, but I don't feel bad about the specific outcome. Ray made a choice to threaten my family with a knife. I made a choice to protect you. His career ending was a consequence of his choice, not mine. If he'd chosen differently, walked past us, left us alone, he'd still be fighting. That's very logical, Linda said. But I'm asking about feelings, not logic. Bruce closed the newspaper, gave her his full attention. I don't feel guilt. I feel relief that you're safe. I feel satisfaction that the threat is gone. And I feel acknowledgement, I guess. Acknowledgement that this is who I am. Someone capable of protection through violence. I spent 3 years trying to be just a teacher, just an actor, just a philosopher. 2 weeks ago reminded me that those are roles I play, but fighter is what I am. And I'm done apologizing for that. Linda nodded slowly. I can accept that. I think. I'm still processing, but I can accept that. Thank you, Bruce said quietly. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, the morning sun coming through their kitchen window, Oakland waking up outside, normal life continuing despite the violence that had disrupted it 2 weeks ago. The baby's okay, Linda said suddenly. I went to the doctor yesterday while you were teaching. Everything's developing normally. Due date is late October. Bruce's face transformed, the serious expression melting into something softer, happier. October. That's 7 months. We need to start preparing. Crib, clothes, names. We have time, Linda interrupted gently. But yes, we should start thinking about those things. Start planning for this new person who's going to change everything. Everything's already changed, Bruce said. That alley changed everything. Made me realize what matters most. Not television, not reputation, not teaching martial arts to Hollywood actors. You, the baby, family. That's what I'm fighting to protect. That's what gives purpose to all the training and the philosophy and the capability. Linda reached across the table, took his hand. I know, and I'm grateful. Even when I'm scared by what you can do, I'm grateful that you can do it, that you're willing to do it, that you chose me and chose our family as the thing worth protecting. They sat holding hands across the kitchen table, both of them understanding that the alley had been a crucible, burning away pretense, forcing honesty, revealing the truth beneath carefully constructed identities. Bruce Lee was a teacher, an actor, a philosopher, but he was also a fighter, and both were real. Both were necessary. Both were him. 6 months later, October 1967. Brandon Lee was born on October 28, 1967 at Oakland Hospital. 7 pounds, 3 ounces. Healthy. Perfect. Bruce held his son for the first time in the hospital room, Linda exhausted but smiling from the bed, and felt something shift fundamentally in his understanding of himself. Before Brandon, Bruce had fought to protect Linda, to build his career, to prove Kung Fu's legitimacy. Those were important motivations, but they were still partially about ego, about reputation, about how the world saw him. After Brandon, everything became simpler. He fought to protect his family. Nothing more, nothing less. Everything else, teaching, acting, developing Jeet Kune Do, all of it was in service of creating a world where his son could grow up safe. The alley incident 6 months ago had been the beginning of that understanding. Brandon's birth completed it. James Lee came to visit that evening, brought flowers for Linda, a stuffed animal for Brandon. He looks like you, James said, peering at the tiny baby in Bruce's arms. Poor kid. Bruce laughed. He'll be handsome. Eventually. He'll be a fighter, James said seriously. With you as a father? He'll have no choice. You gonna teach him? When he's ready, Bruce said. Not to fight, not primarily, but to protect himself. To understand violence without being consumed by it. To be capable without being aggressive. Everything I've learned, the good parts, not the mistakes. I'll teach him that. Your father will be proud, James said quietly. Bruce's father, Lee Hoi Chin, a famous Cantonese opera performer, had died 4 months ago in Hong Kong. Bruce hadn't been able to attend the funeral, had received news of his death by telegram, had processed that grief privately while teaching, acting, preparing for fatherhood. I hope so, Bruce said. He wanted me to be more than a fighter, to be an artist, a thinker, a teacher. I think I've done that, while still being able to fight when necessary. That balance, that's what I want to teach Brandon. Linda watched from the bed, seeing Bruce hold their son, seeing the transformation in his face, understanding that the man who'd broken Ray Morrison's wrist in 4 seconds and the man cradling this tiny baby with infinite gentleness were the same person. Capability and tenderness. Violence and protection. Fighter and father. All of it real. All of it Bruce. 1973, 6 years later. Brandon Lee was 5 years old when his father died in Hong Kong on July 20th, 1973. Too young to fully understand, old enough to remember fragments. His father's laugh, his father's precise movements, his father's patient teaching. Linda would tell him the stories as he grew older. Would tell him about Oakland, about the early years, about the struggles and the triumphs. Would tell him about James Lee, about the students Bruce had taught, about the philosophy Bruce had developed. But she wouldn't tell him about the alley. Wouldn't tell him about Ray Morrison. Wouldn't tell him about the 4 seconds that had revealed who Bruce Lee really was beneath the public persona. That story stayed private, known only to Linda, Bruce, now gone, James, who would die the year before Bruce, Vincent, and the 3 men who'd been there that night, Ray and his 2 associates. Brandon would discover hints of it eventually. Years later, as an adult actor himself, researching his father's life, interviewing people who'd known Bruce in Oakland. But the full story would remain elusive, fragmented, the details lost to time and the discretion of those who'd witnessed it. Underscore. Underscore. 1993, 26 years after the alley. Brandon Lee died on March 31st, 1993, during the filming of The Crow. Accidental shooting on set. Tragic. Impossible. 28 years old. Linda Lee, now 58 years old, attended her son's funeral and thought about the alley in Oakland, about the night Bruce had protected them, about how violence seemed to follow her family despite all of Bruce's efforts to channel it toward discipline and control. 2 men attended the funeral who seemed out of place among the actors and martial artists and family friends. One was an older Mexican-American man, maybe late 50s, with cauliflower ears and tattoos faded with age. Carlos, still alive, still teaching, still grateful for what Bruce had taught him 30 years ago. The other was an African-American man, early 60s, broader through the shoulders despite his age, moving carefully like someone whose body remembered violence. Marcus, he'd become a boxing coach after leaving the underground scene, had trained dozens of fighters, had always credited Bruce Lee as the teacher who'd shown him that skill beat strength. Linda didn't recognize them, but they stood at the edge of the funeral, paying respects to the son of the man who'd changed their lives. After the service, Carlos approached Linda hesitantly. SD, 1993, during the filming of The Crow. Accidental shooting on set. Tragic. Impossible. 28 years old. Linda Lee, now 58 years old, attended her son's funeral and thought about the alley in Oakland, about the night Bruce had protected them, about how violence seemed to follow her family despite all of Bruce's efforts to channel it toward discipline and control. 2 men attended the funeral who seemed out of place among the actors and martial artists and family friends. One was an older Mexican-American man, maybe late 50s, with cauliflower ears and tattoos faded with age. Carlos, Still alive, still teaching, still grateful for what Bruce had taught him 30 years ago. The other was an African-American man, early 60s, broader through the shoulders despite his age, moving carefully like someone whose body remembered violence. Marcus. He'd become a boxing coach after leaving the underground scene, had trained dozens of fighters, had always credited Bruce Lee as the teacher who'd shown him that skill beat strength. Linda didn't recognize them, but they stood at the edge of the funeral, paying respects to the son of the man who'd changed their lives. After the service, Carlos approached Linda hesitantly. "Mrs. Lee, you don't know me. I am Carlos. I trained with your husband in Oakland. Long time ago. Just wanted to pay respects." Linda looked at him, tried to place him in her memories. "Were you one of the underground fighters?" she asked quietly. Carlos nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Your husband taught me more than how to fight. Taught me discipline, control, when to walk away. Saved my life, probably. I'm sorry about Brandon. Sorrier than I can say." "Thank you," Linda said, her voice tight with grief. "There's something you should know," Carlos said carefully. "About your husband. About what kind of man he was. He could have taught us to be more dangerous. Could have made us better at hurting people. But he didn't. He taught us to be more controlled, more precise, more aware of when not to fight. Half the guys he trained quit fighting entirely, went straight, found legitimate work. Because of what he taught us. Because of who he was." Linda nodded, tears in her eyes. "He was always like that. Always trying to channel violence toward peace. Even when people tried to hurt us. Even when he had to fight. He fought to protect, never to destroy. He was a good man," Carlos said. "Best teacher I ever had. And I'm sorry you lost him. And I'm sorry you lost Brandon. Life's not fair sometimes." "No," Linda agreed. "It's not." Carlos and Marcus left the funeral, leaving Linda with her grief and her memories and her questions about why violence had taken both her husband and her son, despite all their efforts to transcend it. The alley behind what used to be China Garden Restaurant still exists in Oakland Chinatown. The restaurant closed in 1989, replaced by a Vietnamese pho shop, then a Chinese bakery, now a trendy ramen restaurant catering to the young professionals moving into the neighborhood. But the alley remains largely unchanged. Still narrow, still dimly lit by a single streetlight at the parking lot end. Still lined with dumpsters and fire escapes. Nobody marks what happened there on March 15, 1967. No plaque, no memorial, no indication that this unremarkable alley was the site of a 4-second encounter that changed lives. Ray Morrison died in 2003 in Los Angeles, 64 years old, construction worker, never married, no children. His obituary mentioned he'd been a boxer in his youth. Didn't mention Oakland. Didn't mention the night that ended his fighting career. Vincent Chun retired in 1985, left the underground fighting business, opened a legitimate restaurant in San Francisco's Chinatown. Died in 2016 at age 84, surrounded by family, his past operations forgotten or forgiven depending on who you asked. James Lee died in 1972, 48 years old, brain tumor, 6 months before Bruce Lee's death. He never lived to see how famous Bruce would become, how influential, how legendary. But he'd seen the parts that mattered, the friendship, the teaching, the protection of family. Linda Lee is still alive as of 2024, 89 years old, living quietly, occasionally speaking about Bruce at martial arts events, rarely talking about the private moments, the difficult years, the violence that had threatened to consume them. The 3 fighters Bruce taught, Carlos, Marcus, Danny, all lived into their 70s or 80s, all teaching martial arts in various forms, all crediting Bruce Lee as the teacher who'd given them more than technique, who'd given them philosophy, control, understanding that real strength wasn't about hurting people, it was about protecting them. And somewhere in martial arts schools around the world, teachers tell a story they've heard third hand or fourth hand. Bruce Lee was walking with his wife in Oakland, got attacked by street fighters. 3 guys, one with a knife. And Bruce took them all down in 4 seconds. Broke one guy's wrist. The other 2 ran away terrified. That's when you know a martial artist is real, when they can protect their family against multiple attackers and make it look easy. The details vary. Sometimes it's 5 attackers. Sometimes Bruce fought all three simultaneously. Sometimes the knife was two knives. Sometimes Linda was the one who suggested they fight back. But the core truth remains. Bruce Lee, when forced to protect what mattered most, was capable of immediate and decisive violence. Not because he wanted to fight, but because he was willing to fight when there was no other choice. That's the lesson of the alley. That's what happened on March 15th, 1967. Not that violence is good. Not that fighting is the answer. But that capability matters. That protecting your family is worth whatever force is required. That peaceful men must be capable of violence, or they're not peaceful. They're just harmless. Bruce Lee was never harmless. He was peaceful by choice, violent when necessary. And on that night, in Oakland, necessity demanded violence. So he provided it. 4 seconds. 1 broken wrist. 2 men running away terrified. 1 wife protected. 1 threat eliminated. 1 fighter understanding, finally, what it meant to be complete. Not just martial artist. Not just teacher. Not just actor. But protector. Father-to-be. Man who would do whatever was required to keep his family safe. That was Bruce Lee. In the alley and everywhere else. Forever.